Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Mark and this is my 1961 Morris Minor Traveller. This video is going to be a follow-on from the last. With the last one I did the 3,000 mile or 3-month service items. So this one is going to be the next, which is the 6,000 mile or 6-month servicing. I might get a bit controversial towards the end though, so stay tuned. But I hope you find something useful here, and as per the last video, I'm going to start this one under the bonnet. But before we start any items on this service, we do need to have completed the 3,000 mile or 3-month service, which was the previous video. I'll try to put a link up here somewhere to that. So those items need to be done first, then we move on to this 6,000 mile video. Now the fan belt tension needs to be checked, and we check it between the water pump pulley and the crank pulley at the bottom. So about halfway down, the specification is about ½ inch worth of give. That's slightly over. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a tighten up. So the fan belt goes around the pulley at the bottom, crank pulley, around the water pump and around the dynamo or alternator if yours has been swapped out as well. And it's here that we can make the adjustments. Now that is held on by a bolt here on the bracket, another one at the back there. Both of those need to be slightly loosened off. And then we've got down here, then a slide pulley, and so another bracket that's at the bottom of here. Now you can see with these two, the one down the bottom there and the one on the shaft below, all loosened. You should be able to see that the dynamo will move up and down reasonably freely. So now we can move it up and just pinch in those bolts and just make sure then that everything's tight and our fan belt has the correct play. So while we're in and around the dynamo, if we come around the back, there's a little part that sticks out there, and there should be a little cover on there which I'm going to prise off, and we can put a couple of drops of oil in. So whilst we're working in this area, next thing to do is check the spark plugs. Obviously you can do this in any order you like, but so spark plug is a special socket that's got this one's got like a foam or rubber insert to it, so it doesn't damage the plug when it goes over it. It's also got the extra long reach to reach over the top of here. So once we've got the plug out of the car, we can give it a visual inspection. This will tell us how lean or rich the car is running in terms of how much fuel it's using. So ideally you want a browny colour. This one is possibly a little bit on the white side, which would indicate that it's running a little bit lean or not enough fuel. Obviously if they're black, then you are running too rich. Cleaning up wise, I always just run a little bit of wet and dry through the gap, and I'll also spray it with some contact cleaner as well. But you can use petrol. Also need to check the gap in the spark plug as well, and for that we would use a feeler gauge, and the gap should be 0.025 of an inch or 0.63 or 0.64 of a millimeter, and you just want to basically be able to slide it in there without too much movement, and yeah, that's pretty good. Now working our way down the leads to the distributor, we're going to remove the cap. There's a clip on the top there and one on the bottom. Just unclip that and then you can pull that away. So in here we've got a couple of things to do. We've got to basically lubricate some of the moving parts in here, and we need to clean up the breaker points here and check the gap as well. So this shaft is not quite square, obviously it's got curved corners to it, and for the contact breaker points to open, this little shaft here needs to be on one of those corners. Now to do that, I'm going to grab hold of the fan and the belt, and I'm going to rotate the engine until I see that breaker point opening up. I've just done a little bit too far there. Okay, that's about right. Now I can check the gap. And once again, we get our trusty feeler gauge out, and the recommended gap is between 0.13 and 0.15 of an inch. If you need to make an adjustment here, it's basically by undoing this screw here and just moving it on the bracket. There's a bit of a sort of slotted shaft in there, or a slotted hole, and then you can just rotate it on that slotted hole. Just make sure you get the right gap. My contacts are looking fairly clean, but if they are looking black or pitted or dirty, you've got to basically open it up and give it a clean. It might be easier to take it off, which again, you can undo this to nut there, which will loosen off the electrical contacts, and then undo that screw, and then the whole thing should slide off. I'll just put a tiny bit of oil, it might be a little bit too much, around the outside of the shaft. And that will work its way around. And just a tiny little bit on here as well. And tiny little bit in there too. I've just got to pop the rotor arm back on. Now that has a notch, or a little bit sticking out on the back of it there, which fits into this notch here, just to make sure it's orientated correctly. So make sure that's lined up properly and it's slotted all the way back. Now, a lot of these components do wear out after time. There are replacements out there, but I've heard a lot of horror stories of cheaper components and just not lasting long at all. I'm a bit of the mindset that if it's not broke, don't replace it, but they do wear and they will need replacing at some point. But spend the money, get decent components. Now in the passenger footwell of the car, on the side of the gearbox housing, we've got this rubber bung. So we just need to prise that off, which will give us access down there to our gearbox filler plug. Very easy said and done. I'm just going to give it a quick wipe before opening it up, just to get rid of any debris that's sort of around the outside of it. And then I'm going to open it up with a 3/8 socket. Now when it's undone, just be very careful that you don't actually end up dropping it on the floor. And there's your plug. I'm going to give it a quick wipe over. Make sure it's nice and clean. Wasn't too bad actually. But now I can look into the hole and see my gearbox level. Now I can see the oil is sitting here. Now it just needs a little top up. It should be just to the base of the thread of the plug that you've just taken out. Now to refill, I'm just using a funnel from my local health food store, but it's quite a useful one because it's got a bendy attachment on it as well, which means you can keep the funnel upright whilst topping up the oil. As a top up, I'm using just some 2050 engine oil. And then once you're happy that the level is sufficient, you can pop the plug back in. Again, making sure be careful not to drop it. And our trusty oil gun once again, just going to put a couple of little drops of oil on the door hinges and locks. Same goes with the hinge at the top. And of course, don't forget your locking mechanism. So the last job on the list is to check that all the lights are working. So this is where I'm going to get a little bit controversial in this video. So according to the owner's manual, at the 6,000 mile or 6 month mark, the valve tappets should be checked and adjusted. Also the oil drained and the filter replaced. Now my feel is my car is running fine. It doesn't do 6,000 miles a year anyway. And with the current modern oils and their refinement, I feel as though an annual oil change and filter change is quite sufficient. So I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm going to save it for the next one, which will be the 12-month or annual service. Then once we're done, we can take it out for a test drive. So of course, once we've finished all those items, we've got to take the car out for a test drive. And on a day like today, why not? It's a good excuse to get the car out. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, maybe got a few useful tips from it as well. I really appreciate all the views, and if you've liked it, please do give me a thumbs up. I will follow this video up with the next service item, which is the 12,000 mile or 12 months. So until next time, cheerio.